There we go. That should be good. So, would you like to introduce yourself to everyone? For anyone who doesn't know what you're about.
Sure. So I'm Phoenix Apocrypha. I'm one of the three founders and administrators of the Circle of the Fallen Theistic Satanic community. And I'm here because Ecstasy was checking out our server and our website, and he thought you guys might like to hear from me.
Would you like to tell everyone what you do for Circle of the Fallen?
Well, I'm one of the three leads. We're sort of in like a triangle balance situation where we work as a team. Uh, I'd say at this point I'm generally the most active one in the server itself. I also style myself as our community librarian. My personal path leads me to reading a lot of satanic literature, and so I have a sense for kind of where the stuff that's a little more useful is. And I also have quite a collection of books, and I helped us put together our website, which includes a free resource library for anyone who wants to learn more about Satanism.
And our last question before we get into some more personal stuff. Have you ever been interviewed before?
Not in a capacity like this. I've certainly never been on a podcast, so this is new and interesting.
Oh, there's a first time for everything. Should go pretty well though. So, jumping straight into some personal stuff. How long have you been practicing Satanism?
Around 6.5 years. I can't say exactly how long it's been because I've long forgotten the actual specific date, but I know it was in springtime, and I know it was in 2020. Yeah, 2020. So 6.5 years-ish.
Practice a sect, or are you more self-stylized in practice?
I'm very much self-stylized. I've read a lot of books by particular groups, but I don't follow anyone to the letter by a long shot.
If you could narrow it down to one thing, what would you say drew you to Satanism the most?
Man. If we can make that one thing a book, I would say that Paradise Lost was really my gateway. If we're going for something broader like a concept, it's a little harder to say. Like, I would say now that the central value of Satanism to me is definitely freedom, but I don't know if I really knew that's what it was when I first started looking into it. I think when I first started looking into it, I just got drawn in by sort of a strange innate sense of rightness, which I think a lot of people can relate to, actually.
Was that your first introduction to Satanism? Was it Paradise Lost, or did you get into the more like popular, like atheistic stuff first?
It depends on how you would define Satanism, I guess, because of course Paradise Lost was written by a Christian. But I read Paradise Lost long before I read any official satanic literature. I read it as a teenager, and I actually read Frankenstein first, and of course identified heavily with the monster because what teenager doesn't? And in the book, he mentions reading Paradise Lost and identifying with Satan, and that led to me reading Paradise Lost and kind of agreeing with the monster that Satan's a very relatable character in that book. And funny enough, that means I read Paradise Lost before I read the Christian Bible, even. But I would say that kind of planted the seed in the back of my head that, oh, this Satan guy seems pretty interesting. When I first started looking into actual satanic stuff, like stuff written by Satanists, then yeah, I started off with the atheist stuff, but I never really bought the idea that that atheistic Satanism was all that there was, or that it was the origin point. That just didn't make sense to me.
Do you have any beliefs prior to Satanism?
I was actually raised pagan, not like a strict pagan, like my parents weren't, heathens or Hellenics or anything like that. We were just part of sort of a general loosey-goosey pagan church growing up. But that was my origin point. I'd gotten sort of disconnected from it by the time I was 18, not for like any profound reason, but just because I was a teenager and I had other things on my mind. And I ended up sort of coming back to spirituality a few years later when I went to college, because for my undergrad I studied Buddhism, never identified as a Buddhist, but I read a lot of their literature, and I ended up feeling a real like sense of awe at how profound and deep and meaningful scripture can be. So I started looking for scripture that felt right to me. And ironically enough, even though I did settle on Satanism as religion, as my religion, I still have yet to find a book of scripture that I would say like strikes me with that level of profoundness. But I also know by now that that's kind of my path, is to keep searching. So that's what I'm doing.
Could you give a breakdown of your beliefs in Satanism? Like, how do you think Satan interacts with our universe?
So we're talking more like on the metaphysical theological side, yeah, not like in terms of philosophy or culture.
Yeah, more on the metaphysical side. Yeah.
Uh, well, I'd say that Satan very much manifests in different forms for different people. And I feel the need to say on record for the recording, if you hear a dog yipping in the background, I apologize. I have nowhere else to put him, and he's talkative. I promise he's fine. He's just chatty. But so yeah, I generally think of Satan as this very like sort of flexible entity. He's really more of like a godhead or an overarching force in my particular practice. I do interact with him more directly under three particular names, those being Samael, Lucifer, and Iblis. But I don't believe those are his only names. I believe he has many. And it's like he's sort of he is both an exterior entity and an interior entity to me. If I'm being really picky, I call myself a trans-theist, not just a theist. Which, for those who haven't heard the term before, trans-theism is kind of an overarching label for any religious belief system that kind of transcends the question of atheism and theism, kind of goes beyond that dichotomy into something new, which looks different depending on what trans-theistic faith, you're looking at. But Jainism and Thelema have both been cited as examples of existing faiths that can have trans-theistic sects or elements to them. So it's like I kind of agree with the atheists a little bit in terms of the concept of Satan as the self, but I also view him as an exterior entity who can be interacted with and talked to. So I'm kind of walking the middle road where that's concerned. And I feel like I'm at risk of just rambling on and on about this because my views are highly specific to me and are also evolving all the time. So it's really hard to just sum it up in a few quick words.
Moving on to more questions focused around Circle of the Fallen. Would you like to? Well, I'll give a basic summary of Circle of the Fallen, like what you guys do, stuff like that.
Sure. So I guess you could think of the Circle of the Fallen as kind of like a non-denominational community for theistic Satanists. We're not a church. We're not a magical tradition or anything like that. We don't have an established set of lore or practices or rituals. We instead kind of try to think of ourselves as kind of like a satanic living room, where anyone who's willing to sort of set aside their differences and hang out civilly can hang out with us. And we've got people from sort of all walks of the satanic spectrum, atheists and theists, although mostly theists. We've got Luciferians, we've got diabolists, we've got demonolators, we've got anti-cosmic Satanists, we've got the whole gambit. And we also have some folks who are not Satanists as well, although they are in the minority. We also consider ourselves a bit of an educational platform for folks who are curious and want to know more. Our primary community rule is mutual respect, and that's kind of the only thing you really need to stick to in order to be welcome there. We don't allow for practice policing or bigotry or general rudeness. we welcome, healthy discussion and healthy debate, but we really don't want anybody careening into the chat claiming that they know the way to do things, because we're very much of the belief that the only one who knows how you need to do Satanism is yourself.
What would you say influenced you to make Circle of the Fallen?
It was sort of a spontaneous thing, really. It was funny. I'll just tell you the story. Basically, I and the two other founders who go by Vox Serpentis and Dr. Nine happened to stumble, completely disparate of each other, didn't know each other, into the same Satanic Discord server. And this server wasn't anything special. It wasn't a community. It was just that one guy who was brand new to Satanism wanted to learn more, and he decided the best way to do that was to make a Discord server and fling the link around the internet, and we all found it. So that was how we initially met. And we friended each other, but we didn't talk a whole lot, except in the server itself. And then the server itself went quickly downhill. The guy who created it, he, despite being very new to Satanism and claiming that he'd made the server in order to learn, he got pretty uncomfortable every time someone with more experience than him, even significant experience, would correct him on something or share their wisdom on a topic. And he and I ended up butting heads quite a bit, because even though he allowed minors in his server and he had segregated sections for not safe for work material, he didn't respect his own rules, and he would post fairly graphic sexual images and stuff in channels where minors could see, and I'd call him out on that and he'd get annoyed with me. And one day, I guess I just pushed him too far, because I had a tiff with him about an image that he posted that I felt the kids shouldn't be seeing. And within a couple of hours, I looked at my phone to see that I had been kicked from his server. And it turned out that most of us had been. So Vox grabbed me and Nine, and he threw us into a new server and gave us both admin privileges and said, okay, listen, I think the three of us are kind of on the same page in terms of what we feel like a satanic community should look like. Why don't we just make our own? And I had not at that point been planning to do anything in relation to leadership in Satanism, even just something as minor as running a Discord server. But I kind of said, yeah, sure, fuck it, why not? And we've been growing ever since. And funny thing, but we did learn why that original server owner kicked most of us. And his justification was that we were quote unquote too political, that he didn't want any politics in his server and we were all too political. And all of us were very confused by that, because we were a diverse bunch with a lot of different political opinions, and also a lot of us hadn't ever spoken about politics in there. And that's when we noticed that every single one of us, except for Vox, was queer in some way. And Vox was the more knowledgeable Satanist who would generally speak up against the guy who founded the server. So it became really obvious that he probably kicked us all because he didn't like being surrounded by queer people, and he didn't like having a guy around who could call him out on his ignorance. So for a while we had a joke in the server where we would say that we were for the girls and the gays and Vox, because he was our only cishet member. That's not true anymore. But that's the origin story of Circle of the Fallen, is we were spontaneously created after we all got banished from another server for being too political just by existing.
What would you say makes Circle of the Fallen different from other satanic organizations?
I would say that we aren't really interested in forming we aren't, well, right off the bat, we're not interested, as I said, in being a religious organization in the way that it's typically thought of, right? We're not trying to be a church or a magical tradition or something like that. We're not interested in creating a canon of our own books that all the members have to follow or something like that. And in the case of atheistic Satanism, I would also say that we are not really politically driven. We do have a politics server in our or a politics channel in our server, but that also just kind of exists because the alternative would be that people talk about politics a whole bunch in the main channel, and we don't want to have to police that, so we just ask that everybody kind of keep it in the one place. But anyway, yeah, what sets us apart? Sorry, I've got a lot of thoughts running through my head right now. I'm really scattered. I would say that we aren't interested in making anybody feel like their identity as a member of the circle is what makes them a Satanist. You know, I feel like a lot of people have this mentality of like, well, I'm a Satanist because I am a member of the Church of Satan, or I am a member of the Satanic Temple, or I am a member of, choose a theistic group here. Whereas we're like, we don't dictate whether you're a Satanist or not. Like, that's entirely your business. But if you want to be around other Satanists of all kinds, we are a space to do that in.
What would you say are some challenges you face as a group?
Amazingly, not a whole lot. I feel like we've been very lucky in that regard. I think that our biggest obstacles so far have just essentially been tech difficulties with Discord itself. About a year in, we suffered a pretty severe hack. One of the admin profiles got hacked, and it started spamming the server and deleting stuff and all that. So we had to delete and remake. But that whole process went as well as it possibly could have been. We were already up to like a third of our original member count within a couple of weeks, and within a couple of months we had our old numbers back, and we've only continued to grow from there. So I wouldn't say it ended up being a major setback, and it was also the kick in the pants we needed to build our website, so that was a good thing. And we've also created a secondary community on Matrix recently, because we're a little put off by what Discord's trying to do in terms of pushing age verification. We're all in favor of privacy and that kind of thing, and we don't want anybody to frankly, we just don't want any of our members feeling like they have to give Discord their IDs, because we're certainly not going to. But that being said, it's also good to have spaces to talk about the more gnarly adult aspects of religion. So we have a second community on Matrix for that. So yeah, those are kind of only been our two biggest obstacles. We just kind of continue on from there without issue. I'm sure that what a lot of servers have to deal with is an influx of sort of unwanted individuals, right? Trolls and that sort of thing. But we have a really robust gateway process where we actually personally interview each person coming into the server, and we sort of double check for signs that this is a person who isn't going to be able to respect our rules and respect the space. And if they're like that, then they just don't get in. So we don't get a lot of cacophony or issue within the community itself, I'm happy to say.
It's quite funny you mentioned the website, actually, because that's leading into my next question. What would you say is the purpose of the website, again, for anyone who hasn't already come across it?
So circleofthefallen.org has sort of a two-pronged purpose. The first is to, of course, just tell the world a little bit about what we're about, get our name out there more, give another avenue for which people can discover us. But it is also the home of our library, which was curated by me, and the whole website is hand-coded by Dr. Nine, so thank you for that, Nine. And I wanted us to have a public-facing website because I can't think of a lot of places where a whole lot of specifically satanic literature is collected in one place for people to explore. And when it is, it's often a place where the website is fairly unstable because they're sharing documents illegally, which means that all it takes is for one copyright holder to notice them and it'll get taken down. So the Circle of the Fallen library is curated of only either texts that I am reasonably certain I can share for free. You know, they're in the public domain, or the authors have been absent from the internet for decades, so they're unlikely to take issue with their work being shared or what have you. Or in a couple of cases, there are some books recommended on there that I couldn't share for free, but I seriously think are worth the money. And the idea behind it being public is that I wanted these resources to be available to the whole world, even if they didn't want to join our community. I would love for more people to join our community. Please come in, our doors are open. But if someone doesn't want to join us, or if they join us and decide that we're not their cup of tea and they'd like to leave, or even if they're not, someone looking to become a Satanist themselves, if they're a curious parent or a worried spouse or something like that, an academic researcher, whoever, I wanted these resources to be available in one place and freely accessible on the internet for anyone who might need them.
Do you say there's anything specific that inspired you to make your library, or was it just a general lack of accessibility on the internet?
The draw towards libraries and archival work has very much been a personal passion project for me. I found Satanism around the same time that I found my calling in terms of a career. I was sort of midway through my bachelor's degree, and I realized that I wanted to become an archivist. And realizing that at the same time that I realized I wanted to be a Satanist, and having the realization that Satanism simultaneously has this enormous wealth of literature, and yet it's never really been organized, codified, categorized in any way. It's just kind of a bunch of stuff thrown out there, scattered across history with no sense of organization, and in some sense not even respect. That's changed recently. We have a few academics out there now who are taking us more seriously and studying us as a real religion. But in general, if somebody asks you for like a handful of really important, Christian books or Buddhist books, you can probably name at least one, maybe even two or three. If you ask somebody what they know of the Satanic canon, they might mention LaVey, maybe, and that's about it. So that was just kind of my thing from the beginning. I was like, this is my work. My work is to sort through this mess and find what I can in it. After I got thrown into starting Circle of the Fallen with the other two, I was like, well, here's my opportunity to put, at that time, around 4 years of work to some good, and start, giving people some advice, giving people my reviews of the books that I've read, and polling other more experienced Satanists for what they've read, and getting on that and building my collection and whatnot. So by the time that we were in a place to build the website, I had quite a lot of stuff I was sitting on. And I was like, well, this seems like the right thing to do. It's like, if I'm doing all of this work for my own sake, it seems like I should share that work with the world and make it just a little bit easier for other people to at least find this stuff, because so much of it was scattered across the internet or just hidden on people's hard drives. A few of the documents on the website are literally stuff that old timers from the community just had sitting on their computers and were kind enough to donate to me. So yeah, it's a personal passion project, and it's kind of entwined both with my professional calling and my religious calling at the same time.
Has there been any groups you've been reluctant to add to your library?
Yes, mostly because I don't want my intent with the library to be misconstrued. So the library is not my personal recommended reading list. It's not a list of books that I think that everybody should read. A lot of them I don't even personally like all of that much. It's not, a college course. It's a library, and the intention of a library is purely to give people access to books. It's not to tell you what you should be reading, and it's certainly not to censor books and keep them from you. So in that respect, I think that I sometimes hesitate when it comes to, let's say, more controversial and politically fraught groups that are out there who have freely available material I could technically post to the website. I wonder if I'm doing people a disservice by not providing access to those materials sort of with context and necessary warning implied. But at the same time, there's always the question of at what point does accessibility become platforming? Uh, and that's a really difficult question that I'm still grappling with on a personal level, and it'll probably be ultimately up to me to decide since the library is my baby. But in general, my big rule at this point is that I don't share anything on the website that explicitly promotes crime, especially violent crime. You know, if we're talking human sacrifice or whatever, I don't want that on there. And I also don't share anything that includes political extremism. I'll just say it. There's a few well-known Nazi groups out there, and I don't think that their material is. I think their material is difficult to engage in for a newcomer. Let's put it that way. I think that there are many experienced and wise Satanists out there who can engage with material from these groups and gain something interesting from them, even if it's just historical knowledge, without falling prey to what they're trying to do to people. But I think that there is a serious risk when it comes to newcomers engaging with that material right off the bat. And I know that a lot of people who come to our website are new to Satanism. So at this time, that's what I'm keeping out of the library is outright criminal action and political extremism.
If you could name just one person or a group, which would you say has been your favorite to research for your archive?
So when you say favorite, do you mean like that I've gotten the most like personal like enjoyment and like wisdom out of? Or do you mean just the one I've had the most fun learning about because they were so ridiculous?
Actually, go on. Yeah, we have one of both. I think that'd be interesting.
Um, the first one's actually kind of hard to answer. There are genuinely so many groups out there, and I wouldn't call myself an expert on any of them at this point. Like, you know, sure, I've been doing this for 6.5 years, but 6.5 years actually isn't all that long, and I've gotten 2 degrees and started a career in that time as well, so it's not like I can dedicate all my time to this. Um, I'm actually kind of going on a binge of the Church of Satan right now, which I did not do back at the beginning of my journey, even though many other people do, because I just wasn't all of that interested in LaVey's stuff after reading his initial Bible. But I recently read the book Born with a Tale by Doug something. I'm forgetting his last name. But that was a recently released history book on LaVey in particular, a biography, and it you know includes the good, bad, and the ugly. You get the sense that he is neither hyping LaVey up nor condemning him wholeheartedly, and that was a fascinating read, and it's making me want to peel back more layers on that subject. I think that in some ways it's unfair that the Church of Satan is the organization we have the most knowledge of, because there are so many out there. People don't realize how many satanic groups have lived and died just over the last few decades. It's genuinely staggering. And oftentimes the only record I have of them is like a single screenshot of their old website, or maybe, if I'm lucky, like a small book that their leader penned at some point. But that being said, there's a lot to dig into when it comes from the Church of Satan. So if you're curious about it, like, by all means dig in. There's a lot of juicy gossip and drama where that's concerned. In terms of like the group that has given me the purest like ridiculous joy, not because I think there's really any value in what they have to say, but because they were so funny to encounter, was one of my first, actually, back when I was just getting started and I was scrolling eBay to get myself a copy of the Satanic Bible. I happened across another book called The Temple of Satan, not to be confused with the Satanic Temple, different group. And The Temple of Satan was a book written by some people who only stylized themselves as the Dark Lords. And I was like, oh great, we're in like Star Wars territory, tell me more. And I bought the book, and it's so bad. I would not recommend it. I would not even recommend buying it as a joke, because as far as I can tell, there's no way to purchase it without giving money directly to this group, and I don't think they deserve your money. But They are a theistic group that believes very strongly in the coming of the Antichrist and the belief that there is eventually going to be a holy war on earth where Satanists are going to overrun everybody and slaughter everyone who won't join us and take over the world as a dark army and whatever. Uh, and they present themselves as like so edgy and so violent and so like ready to die for our Lord Satan or whatever. But then the book is also full of these pictures that are just embarrassing. Like there's a section in the book where they're describing the supposed military ranks in their unholy army. They talk as if they've got thousands of members. I'm convinced this is maybe 5 guys in a basement somewhere. But there's a section in there where they're like, and these are our assassins, the Night Stalkers. They move silently through the shadows and dispose of our political enemies. And then there's just a picture of some white guy in a balaclava crouching behind a bush somewhere at midday, clutching the book in one hand and a pocket knife in the other, and staring dead at the camera. And it's just the most absurd thing. I laughed out loud when I turned that page. And that was my first encounter with a group that I would consider like truly ridiculous and not worth listening to at all. Like I still pull the book off my shelf sometimes to laugh at it, but if you are wanting to delve deep into a group because you're hoping that they hold wisdom for you, I really don't recommend the Temple of Satan. They've got very little going on of worth, I'd say.
I think I've actually seen this book before on eBay being sold as like a used book, so maybe they're not in print anymore. But I recognize this image you're describing to me. Like, doesn't it say on the same page they carry around like devil dolls and stuff like that? Like this crazy shit.
There's something like that. I don't remember all the details of the book because it's been years since I've read it, but like every single page, there's just another level of like, and we're so edgy and we're so scary and we're going to take over the world. Just you wait. We're everywhere. Our black lodges are across the entire world. And I'm like, sure, buddy. Whatever you say, man.
Would you say has been the biggest challenge with your archive?
Biggest challenge. I would say part of it is having enough material to share. Like, I'm pretty happy with what we have so far. I think it's a decent starting place. And I actually get people telling me that it's an overwhelming amount of material, even though there's a Start Here tab in case you're overwhelmed by all of it. But just as someone who loves to read and loves to have a variety in what I learn from, I feel like I don't have all of that much yet. And that is limited by the fact that I want to respect the author's copyright. I want to do that both because I have no desire to beef with anyone, and because obviously if we start sharing copyrighted material on our website's not going to last, and longevity is our plan here. So I'm kind of always searching for more books out there, or not even just books, but websites, podcasts, what have you. But books are my specialty, of course, that I can share freely, which at this point means a lot of searching small publication websites for things that people are willing to release into the public domain, which is, of course, fairly rare because these days most people at least want to sell their book for $5 on Amazon, if nothing else. But occasionally I do find a person here or there who's willing to share their book with me, or who just says on their front page, this book is released into the public domain, do whatever you want with it. In which case, once I have read it and confirmed that there's nothing that violates my rule set on there, then I can put it up. And I encourage people to return to the website throughout the years because my suspicion is that it's going to grow.
Moving into some uncategorized questions, some stuff that I didn't know where else to put it. But what do you personally believe makes someone a Satanist?
This is going to be a very circular answer, but identifying as one. I actually am a person who has fairly low standards what constitutes someone being a Satanist. And I also categorically reject calling someone a Satanist if they do not identify as one. Like, I'm not willing to call Aleister Crowley a Satanist, for example, even though his work was definitely influential on us. And I know some satanic Thelemites who would argue that he was and just didn't use the word. But in my mind, he didn't use the word. Therefore, we can't call him a Satanist, even, influence aside. And I get frustrated when people will call like a pre-Christian mythological figure like Prometheus satanic, when it's like you're really retroactively applying a label to something that would not be used in context and doesn't even actually make a whole lot of sense, in my opinion. Um, so then when we have someone who is identifying as a Satanist, what differentiates them between someone who's calling themselves a Satanist and isn't really? Uh, who are we to say what is and isn't Satanism? Quite frankly, it's like I could be weirdly pedantic and say that the atheists aren't real Satanists, but I see no point in that. And I think that, at least in so far as the ones who actually put a lot of work and rigor into their personal philosophy, it sounds like a satanic philosophy and a satanic way of life to me. There are other religions that have atheistic groups or culture in them. There's atheistic Jews, atheistic Buddhists, and so on and so forth. So to say that there can't be any atheistic Satanists feels wrong. But then, okay, within theistic Satanism, what are the rules there? Well, in my view, one of the few things that we can all mostly agree on where Satan is concerned is that he represents freedom. If we start laying down rules for what you have to believe or how you have to practice in order to be a Satanist, we are by definition limiting each other's freedom. So that doesn't really work for me either. And I know that some people would hear that and go like, well, then so just anybody can be a Satanist whenever they want. That's illogical. That doesn't make sense to me. And I would argue back that to actually embody that spirit of freedom is very difficult. And I don't think there's any harm whatsoever in someone identifying themselves as a Satanist for a few years and then realizing that actually, like, it doesn't work for them, or they're not embodying it, or what have you. Like, that's fine. I really have no sense of like personal offense when I see someone practicing Satanism in a way that's totally different from mine. Like, whatever, they can go do their thing. That's fine.
What are your thoughts on a more extreme group? Like, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but not in the sense of just like how you perceive them in general. What are your thoughts on the more extreme groups like O9A or Temple of Blood?
I have the somewhat controversial view that I do not go out of my way to cut them out of Satanism as a whole. I really don't like playing No True Satanist. I think it's pointless, and I also think that it's a game that other religions already play that we critique them for all the time. Like when we talk about Christianity and folks get mad at Christians for being hypocrites and swearing off each other for doing bad things or for violating their own laws and just saying, oh, that person wasn't a real Christian. It's like, yeah, that's hypocrisy. We should call that out. Let's not repeat that behavior in our own community. These groups identify as Satanists. They use satanic symbolism. They worship satanic deities. Like, what else are we going to call them? That being said, I don't believe that there is any obligation for one Satanist to like another Satanist. I don't believe there's any obligation for us to have some kind of universal satanic community. That doesn't exist, and I honestly don't believe it ever will. So, in that sense, just as those guys are free to do whatever they want, technically speaking, I'm free to put my foot down and say that I don't want them near me and I don't want them in my community. And I think that there's a lot more power in saying, like, yes, these people are Satanists. No, they're not the Satanists that I am interested in having in my social circle, than there is in just wringing our hands and going, oh, well, they're not really Satanists because of XYZ, belief standard that they don't meet. It's like, stand up for yourself. Be clear in your convictions.
Before we leave, would you like to let everyone know where they can find you, or your socials, your Discord, all that good stuff?
Well, you'll find my Discord if you join my server. And you can join my server by going to circleofthefallen.org, circleofthefallen.org. There's the join link there. And if you join our Discord, then you'll meet me fairly quickly. I'd rather not put my whole Discord name out in the podcast itself. Besides that, I'm actually very minimal on social media, and I'm trying to be more minimal. I do show up on the r/Theistic Satanism subreddit as Phoenix Apocrypha sometimes because my co-admin Vox owns the subreddit, so we haunt it regularly. So you can find me on Reddit, Phoenix_Apocrypha. And you also, if you want to get in direct contact with me for some reason and you don't have Reddit or Discord, you can email me at phoenix@circleofthefallen.org, and that's Phoenix, Phenex, like the demon from the Goetia.
Well, it's been great talking to you.
Been great talking to you.
And hopefully I'll speak to you soon.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. Have a good night.
Have a good night.